Good evening. A running record is a great tool for a teacher. It helps them assess their students' reading level and their reading comprehension of a story as well. The child would read aloud to the teacher, and through that, the teacher can assess each individual student and adjust their reading level and how they work with them. Instead of doing it as a whole group, it can be done as an individual. With a running record, you can pick up on their reading patterns, their comprehension of the story, their reading abilities. Are they able to self correct if they make a mistake while they read? And perhaps some of the other errors that are occurring, such as adding a word that wasn't in the text as they read, mispronouncing, skipping words, things like that, that you wouldn't necessarily notice if you were in a large group, that you could see in a smaller group and assess. And as a teacher, you can adjust that. I like the idea of a running record. I haven't used one yet, but I think it's a great way to give, for me, an accurate assessment of the progress that the student is making, or if the student may need additional support and a change of the lesson plan that's going on, and differentiate whether it needs to be extended, remediation, however it needs to happen. Um, my hope in a running record is to support each student in reading and reading comprehension, to make sure all students are at the correct and appropriate reading level. However, the steps need to take to get there. It's an individualized step instead of a group, so I can make sure I create a plan that will meet each individual's needs. So, implementing a running record, I think first and foremost, what you need to do is create a baseline for each individual student. As I've said before, not every student is going to be the same. Sometimes you have some that are at the same level, and so that would be easier to group them together. But I think every single student has to have a baseline, so you know where to start with them at each individual, as well as teaching in general and what level you may need to start at. Um, I will assess the information that comes from the baseline of each individual, and then create an appropriate reading record with books for each student. Um, I think that there's two good ways. I read about two good examples and ways how to implement these reading records. So during the daytime, I think a good time would be when you are allowing your students to have silent reading, as to take an individual child, let's say perhaps to a reading area that's quiet, that they can read to you and you can hear what they're saying, perhaps any errors they may be making, the comprehension, ask questions, and understand if they're comprehending the story that they may have read. Sometimes a child can be very accurate in reading, but not comprehending what they're reading. I think another great idea, and I know I've seen it work in several schools, is using it as a center time, as a center, excuse me. So then the teacher is working on a small group, maybe just 2, 3 children. She has the time, he has the time, or she has the time to give to each individual student and see where they're at. Perhaps one of the things that you adjust is to put them into groups that different levels. Um, and I've included a reading record that I thought was great. So on the reading record, it's like a spreadsheet almost, not Excel, but it's spreadsheet. So there's each line in the book gets its own section, and each word that they read, you can check above it as a teacher. If they were accurate on that word, you give it a check. If they aren't, you can put an E above it for errors. Like an error would be they substituted another word for the actual text, or the actual word that was in the text, or they omitted a word while they were reading, something like that. You can put an E over that. You can put an SC for self-correction if they corrected themselves at a certain part while they were reading that sentence. There's M for meaning, S for structure, V for visual. So each sentence, like I said, is listed out on one side, and then there's columns on the other where you would tally up the errors, where you would tally up the self-correction, where you would tally up the visual, the structural, the meaning. And through that, there's a point system in the sense that out of, let's say there was 50 words, that perhaps they got 45 of the 50 words correct. So whatever percent that would equal to in the tallies is their level of reading. And then from there, each, let's say, block of Levelsley, like 95 to 95%, um, this is a level that they can go to, 80 to 87% is this level of reading. And then at the bottom of the paper, you have your explanations as to what adjustments need to be made, what you saw, what needs to be done, what level they are. And in each time that it's assessed, each time the child is assessed, you can make adjustments. I think besides the baseline, I think doing this once um, every 2 weeks will keep you at the beginning of the school year, will keep it fairly accurate. And then I think going forward, I think the ones that struggle should have it at least once a week. The ones that are higher level would be good to go about once a month.